Hello all, welcome to my fragrance journey. My name is Ron, and today I am going to be sharing one of my favorite fragrances, especially for the bedtime, and that is Vanilla Candy Rock Sugar 42 by Kayali. I'm also going to share a couple of fragrances that I think are related. They're not dupes, they're not clones, but they're definitely in the realm. There's some shared DNA. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and get on into it. So, Vanilla Candy Rock Sugar 42 by Kayali. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, the numbers that Kayali will tack on to the end of their fragrance names are to represent the number of formulations that they went through before they landed on the fragrance. So, vanilla 28, that was 28 formulations. This one, 42. Now, this fragrance launched last year. There were two noses behind it. The first is Fabrice Pellegrin, and he's done lots of different things. He's worked a lot with Diptyque and also with Jean-Paul Gaultier. We also have Gabriella Kellariou, who has worked a lot with Kayali themselves, as well as like Bath and Body Works, Brown Girl Jane, and many other houses as well. I first stumbled upon this towards the end of last year, right when everything was really starting to truly go full force with my fragrance obsession. I've always loved fragrance, I've always been interested in it, and it's definitely the last 2-3 years been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this last year and a half or so we really hit a fever pitch. And so this was one of the things that I honed in on as everything really started to heat up. And I wanted this because I was looking for those, as I call them, uber gourmands. The gourmands that are just so food-like, so sweet, so over the top and decadent, and you truly will smell like some sort of a confection or treat, and truly smell edible. Because historically, those aren't fragrances that I've gone for. I've always been more drawn towards things that might be described as dark or deep or sexy or something in that line, or occasionally something, fresh, but never anything that was too foody. Now, when we get to like the home, we're thinking candles, room sprays, that sort of thing. Yes, I can get down with, a vanilla cupcake, a hot cocoa, any of those types of things. I've always been down for that in the home, just not so much on the body. But, again, I wanted to find something that would tick this box and would kind of introduce me to what everybody else was really raving about, because you see everybody talking about these gorgeous, decadent, edible scents, and I wanted to understand and find perhaps one, that works for me. This, I think, is kind of interesting amongst all those. So let me tell you the notes, and then I'll kind of explain where I think it sits, and also, how I just find the scent overall. So as far as the back of the bottle, which is what Kayali always lists on their full-size bottles, they're 50 and 100 mils, they'll list the notes, or at least their key notes as they call them. So there's candied pear, sweet violet, bubblegum, white caramel, rock sugar, and vanilla cream. I think this is pretty apt. I find primarily for myself that I get the pear, the vanilla, and then just that kind of candied sugariness. Everything else that's there kind of blends into something that's in the background, and I think is what kind of adds to what I find is a bit of a perfumey quality to this fragrance. And I know perfumey isn't terribly descriptive or terribly helpful, but if you are somebody, and a lot of y'all who watch my videos, if you are somebody who has smelled lots of different fragrances, you kind of get to know what that means. It just doesn't smell, I guess, as photorealistic as one might expect, or maybe even hope. I kind of hoped initially that it would, but it was a pleasant surprise that it doesn't. It is still absolutely foodie. It is still absolutely very sweet. But this does just have a little bit of pullback. It just stops itself before, fully jumping off into either of those categories. And while that's not exactly what I was looking for as far as my uber gourmand dreams, I've been, again, very pleasantly surprised because I adore this fragrance. I bought it as a blind buy. I bought the 50 ml. You can see here I've got a big bottle, which is the 100 mils, because I've already gone through my 50 mil in the year-ish, actually less, that I had it. I finished it up probably 10 months in. And that's because not only do I love this fragrance, but this has become my favorite and what I consider my signature bedtime scent. I'm somebody who very much enjoys applying a fragrance in the later evening or right before bed, just to enjoy before and as I wind down. I tend to pick things that are what you might imagine. Things that are comforting, warm, soft, and that's what I find with this fragrance. It's all of those things. It's sweet, it's just delightful. It's very vanillic, and it makes it so lovely for bedtime. So that's what I pretty much exclusively wear it as. I do wear it occasionally as a daytime scent, and it's perfectly lovely for that. There's nothing wrong with it for that, but I just find it so much more delightful at bedtime, and because I like to wear it so often at bedtime, I think that also is why I don't wear it as much during the day, because I've really begun to associate this as an evening bedtime, winding down, snuggling into the blanket sort of scent, and I, again, just love it. So this is Vanilla Candy Rock Sugar 42 by Kayali. And now, like I said in the beginning, let's dive into some other fragrances that I think, while not being dupes, while not being clones, and they're not trying to be, are just fragrances in my own collection that I have stumbled upon that smell a bit like this, or at least have a little bit of that DNA. So let's get into it. So our first in this Vanilla Candy family is Untold Absolu. Now, I say family. Again, I find some relation to all of these. I don't find, like I said, that any of these are dupes or clones. Now, in this case, if that were going to be, it would actually be the Kayali, because this fragrance, Untold Absolu, came out in 2014, so 10 years prior. But I don't think the Kayali is trying to dupe this, and nor do I think they successfully did, if somehow, some way they were. But that said, I clearly smell a similarity to it, or some relating notes. So when I first got this, I actually thought they were very similar. I grabbed my bottle of Vanilla Candy just to smell them side by side and compare. Now they're not. Once you smell them side by side, it kind of breaks any notion, if you had it like I did. They're definitely their own fragrance. But like I said, there are some things that I do find similar, namely the fruits and the vanilla. Even though the fruits listed in this are plum and raspberry and bergamot, and in Kayali it's just pear listed, there is a juiciness to these fruits, not quite tropical, not quite like, super, super fruity, but enough of a prominent fruit note and enough of a juiciness and thus enough of a sweetness to them that does remind me of the Kayali. Also, again, the vanilla. The vanilla in this is prominent. I find it's all the way through, just like it is in the Kayali. Although I find with this one, it's not as prominent. If we're doing like a top 3 sort of thing, it's kind of maybe the third thing. We've got the fruits, and then honestly, florals would be next, and then the vanilla. Whereas Kayali, it's in the very, very opening, the pear, but quickly, it's kind of the pear and vanilla tied, and then everything else in the background. But a fruity vanilla situation is what we're going for here with this one. And again, the florals. And so, similar enough that if you liked the Kayali, I think you would like this. Also, though, because I find this one a bit less playful, a bit less, intensely sweet and all of that. It's also a bit more chic, maybe just a bit more mature. So if you found that the Vanilla Candy is too perhaps even juvenile for you. Not that I would consider it a juvenile scent, but I could see how others would. So if you find that's the case, then maybe this one would be the ticket, because this is just, again, it's like a family member, like an aunt or an uncle. This is related. We see the resemblance, but at the same time, we also see how there's a different bit of DNA also in the mix. And so, yeah, I really like this one. I don't know, I must say, I don't know if it's still in production. I should have checked again before I filmed. I do apologize. Actually, let me just look now and see if I can find out quickly. Okay, I've just had a little potter around online. Yeah, it's not looking like it's still in production, at least as far as Elizabeth Arden website. I don't see anything about it, but when I bought this, I also was finding that it was hard to get a lot of info on, so I don't know what the story is on the official production of it. However, I did see it right now all over eBay and FragranceNet, which is where I had bought mine. And on FragranceNet, it's like $22 and change right now. On eBay, around that, sometimes up to 30 or so dollars, but generally 30 and under, you probably would be able to find it if you are interested. And I definitely think it's a good price point at that. If you can get it, I think I got mine for around $30. But yeah, a really nice, solid fragrance. So this is Untold Absolu by Elizabeth Arden. So now we have in our family tree Emerald Mirage by Sphinx. This is a fragrance that launched last year as well. And this is one that I also don't know the nose behind it, but I hadn't really had on my radar at all. Sphinx is a house that I know exists, but I just for whatever reason don't really think of. I'd had a sample passed along to me at one point, and it was fine, but it was nothing that made me more interested or intrigued. So I don't really look at this brand very often. But somebody I follow on Instagram and adore, Alondria, and her name I believe is Lundy Scent Vibe on Instagram. I'll make sure it's correct below in the description. But she had mentioned this and asked if anybody else thought the way that she thought, that this was, I think she put it as the emo brother of Vanilla Candy Rock Sugar. And so while I hadn't smelled it and I couldn't, answer that in the moment, I knew I wanted to answer that for myself. Because of course, again, I clearly love vanilla candy and I had to know about any potential relatives. So I snatched up this travel spray right away, and I've got to say, she's not wrong. This is, as far as the notes, this is passion fruit, orange, strawberry, nectarine, banana, pear, bergamot, lemon, cedarwood, patchouli, jasmine, rose, amber, vanillin, and musk. Boy, is that a lot of notes for a fragrance these days. Typically not too much is called out these days, but whoa, what a fruit salad. So, I don't necessarily find it as much of a fruit salad as it sounds. It is definitely fruity though, and definitely a little bit of that pear, some of the bergamot, the lemon, and also the passion fruit. Those really come out. So again, like the Kayali, we've got a fruity vibe. We've got the pear to match up. We've also got like the Untold Absolu, the bergamot, so a little citrus to match up. So they're definitely, again, kind of linking up that way. We've also got in the base on this one the vanillin. So again, vanilla is very prominent in the Kayali and prominent in the Untold Absolu. And I'd say it's maybe not as prominent here, maybe even kind of fourth, where it was kind of first and second-ish on Kayali, and maybe third on Untold Absolu. Now it's like fourth place for the vanilla on Emerald Mirage. But again, it's there along with those fruits. What also comes into play in this one, though, is that cedar. We do get a decent bit of woodiness. Also, the musk I find comes out a bit, and maybe even a touch of that patchouli. So it's definitely a little bit deeper, woodier, muskier, and just overall a little bit earthier, I'd say. what's interesting to me as far as this fragrance just in and of itself is that we've got all that woody, slight depth going on, but also the passion fruit, and also the other fruits. And so it's interesting to have something that leans a little bit tropical in the top and in that fruitiness mixed with something that is a little deeper and a little woodier and a little earthier. I find that a very interesting combo. Um, that kind of separates it from the other two a little bit, but it's still, again, I can see where she felt that they were related because I would say they are. I would say that this is more of a cousin than a brother. Perhaps still emo, perhaps still a little moodier because this is definitely a little, or not even a little, a lot deeper and darker in comparison to the Kayali. I wouldn't call it a deep dark scent in and of itself, but in comparison, it definitely is. So I can see that that descriptor as far as the emo sibling. But again, I think this is more of a cousin. I actually think it's more related to Untold Absolu. Like this might be the son. So thus the cousin of Kayali. So this is the son of the Elizabeth Arden, who's also, the aunt of the Kayali. So again, they're cousins. That's how they work as far as a family situation. But in and of itself, I do like this fragrance. I don't know that I adore this fragrance. It's definitely not something I love as much as the Kayali, or as much as the Elizabeth Arden, but it's something I'm happy to have. And I think it's really fun to have something, again, that kind of ticks a similar couple boxes, but also is even more of a divergence in some ways. And so while I can grab all three and say, yeah, they're similar, they're related, I can get very different experiences from them. But yeah, this is Emerald Mirage from Sphinx. All right, and then last but not least, we have Guess Seductive by Guess. This is a fragrance that came out in 2010. The nose behind it is Veronique Nyberg, who has also done lots of other fragrances, including many for Carolina Herrera and Jimmy Choo. This fragrance has notes of pear, bergamot, blackcurrant, jasmine, African orange flower, orris root, vanilla, cashmere wood, and olibanum. This is the least related to all four. The notes obviously are very similar. We've got pear again. We've got bergamot, which, while not really something in the Kayali, is in all the others. We've got jasmine, which is a common floral in these. We've got vanilla, of course, and we've even got cashmere wood, which I don't think I mentioned with the Kayali because I just stuck to the notes that were on the back of the bottle. They're kind of key notes, but that, if you look on like Fragrantica and other sites, cashmere wood is something noted with the Kayali too. It's that warmth that I mentioned loving so much, and kind of in the dry down of that kind of hangs around with the vanilla. And that's something that I find definitely in the others, especially the Elizabeth Arden. So this has it too. But overall, I find this to be just a lot lighter in everything. The citrus is actually probably the most prominent, and then the florals, and then it's kind of the pear, the vanilla, the cashmere wood. So we're like maybe a cousin once removed situation here, where some kind of, DNA, but it's very distant, and it's, you kind of have to squint. This is also maybe my least favorite of all of them. It's fine. I, threw this into my cart on Amazon as I was getting some other things just to try it out. It was like $12 at the time. It's very inexpensive. It's fine. It's very light, though, not just in the overall just scent of it, but it also just doesn't last very long. This becomes a skin scent very quickly and maybe lingers on my skin for up to 2 hours at best. And that, to me, for a perfume, is not ideal. I work from home. I don't mind reapplying. But if I feel like I'm having to reapply every break and lunch to really enjoy a fragrance, not so fun. So yeah, this one, it's fine. I'm still curious to try other Guess ones because I know others are much beloved as well by the fragrance community. So I'm curious to see what some of their other creations are like. But this one's just all right. So yeah, this is Guess Seductive by Guess. All right, and then as a little bonus, I guess, I have this little encrusted, shimmering, sparkly bottle of vanilla candy rock sugar. No, this was not something that was ever for purchase. This is actually my first bottle that I got last year, and recently my best friend and roommate who loves to, stone things, we were talking about different things she could work on, and we both arrived at the idea of perfume bottles, and I have them. I actually have some empties going here in a little pile to talk about in a future video once I have a few more and maybe some other things too. And so I thought, oh, of all the empty ones, what would work? Oh, has to be the Kayali and has to be vanilla candy rock sugar. What screams, pink, shimmery, glittery, sparkly like this? So it's just so cute, so fun, and I'm going to be keeping it here in the background of my videos because I really, really love it. And so, yeah, I thought, well, I've got to also mention it in this video because it totally fits the theme. And yeah, now I turn it over to all of you. I would love to know well, first off, have you smelled vanilla candy rock sugar? If so, what did you think of it? I don't care if you hate it. I don't care if you think it's silly or nonsense. I don't care if you're meh. And I'd be chuffed if you love it. Just let me know because I love, again, talking about things. I love seeing everyone else's perspective on the same things. I think it's so interesting. Also, if you've tried any of these other fragrances, or if you have something that you think kind of is in this same vein that I should check out, which I know there are a lot in especially the pear, vanilla, warm. I know that that's a category that isn't short and small. Like there's a lot bursting in that category. So definitely let me know if there's something else within there that I need to check out. And yeah, I just, again, thank you as always for watching. If you want to subscribe and follow along, please do like the things, YouTube stuff. But otherwise, I just, again, thank you for joining me here on my fragrance journey. I hope you all are having a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.